Jeff Howe from The Athletic joins us, and I'm going to start with the story that you broke yesterday at 4 o'clock about Sony Michel. Everyone wants to see the rookie running back in action, but you're telling us that may not happen until September.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably not going to see him in the preseason. You know, if they can squeeze him out there for that Giants game in the finale, you know, so be it. But I think right now with the recovery timetable, not trying to rush him back. I mean, Bill Belichick has a long established pattern of not rushing guys back, especially this time of year, especially with a rookie. You talk about a guy with knee issues in the past, a torn ACL in high school, 2 documented sprains at Georgia. So this is not a situation where they're going to burn this guy real quick, especially he looks explosive. They're really veteran-oriented in the running back depth chart with Burkhead looks really good, James White, obviously, right down the line. So they don't have to rush him back if they don't have to.
But doesn't he stand out as a guy who can make a significant impact when there aren't receivers spread around to throw the ball to? He could be one of those guys you get in space.
Yeah, especially, you know, you look at week 2, Jacksonville. The Patriots are going to have a hard time going outside to the perimeter against those elite cornerbacks. So they're going to have to run a big portion of their offense over the middle with Gronk and Hollister and Burkhead and White. Add Michel into the mix. So that is a game where, you know, you could see him break out as long as the knee's right by then.
Let's shift gears, talk about Eric Decker. Made his first appearance on Saturday in Foxborough. What do you anticipate for a guy like this? We've seen receivers come in, they hit the ground running, everything's good. We've seen very good receivers come here, bent over their head, and opted out. What do you foresee with Eric Decker?
This is nothing against Decker. I just never have big expectations for anybody, like you said, who come in this time of year. I mean, it doesn't matter what they've done. I know he has the experience in McDaniel's system, but this is a guy who has had the injuries pile up in the last couple of years of his career. Yeah, he's a well-established name, very productive career, but you believe it when you see it. Thing I'm most interested in, and it might come out Monday, the contract details. If they gave him any more than, let's say, $100,000 to $150,000 in guaranteed money, then I say, okay, the Patriots look at this guy like he can make the roster and can contribute over the course of the entire season. The 1.9 to 2.5 million that he could make this season means nothing to me. They'll gladly pay that if he's on the roster for 16+ games. What's the guaranteed money look like? If it's south of $100,000, it's basically a tryout.
What is it about this team that some guys just can't hack it when they come in here and they are swimming over their head?
I mean, Reggie Wayne in particular, I remember he was looking around and being like, wait, the veterans have to run every single rep in every single period? No, I kind of just want to hang out over here. So it's about the work ethic. You know, some guys were able to skate by for the majority of their careers, whether they were able to rest on talent alone, a favorable coach, not a guy who is going to, you know, grind you into the ground through these summer months like Bill Belichick. So that is part of it. And then it's just the system. You got to grasp the system, and you have to do it while proving to Tom Brady that you can be in the right place at the right time. So there's a lot on their plates, and if that's not, especially at this stage in their career, guys who have made a lot of money, been productive, and they're just like, yeah, do I really want to do this right now? It's like 95 degrees, it's humid. I'm just going to go back to my hotel room and chill.
It's not the point of the year yet where we can get too specific with players, so I'm going to ask you more generally. Have you seen any shift, any adjustment? Do you have any indication of how this offense may work this year that might be different than what we've seen in prior years? And also piggybacking on that, are they doing anything differently, understanding that Julian's not going to be there for the first 4 weeks?
Not that they're going to show us. So this is going to be the case of we're going to see what we see for the next 3 weeks, and then Bill Belichick's going to cram a whole bunch of stuff behind closed doors during that final 10 days of practice before the opener. I mean, again, I think you're going to see a huge dose of the running backs. Burkhead, White, Michel once he's healthy, and whoever else kind of takes up that last spot. But Jacob Hollister is a guy who looks like the real deal. I mean, taking a big jump. I liked what I heard. I spoke to Kevin Boss, the former Giants tight end, leads his workouts, did a lot of stuff with him over the last year, 3 separate periods over that, and has seen growth. A guy who really came from a small school himself, knows the type of adjustment that Hollister has had to make, and has seen it. So I'm starting to hear the same thing, not just from Boss, but guys like Gronk and, you know, the coaching staff. So I think he can be like that. You know, I'm not going to tell you he's going to come out and catch 60 balls this year, but I think he can complement Gronk, at least with that over-the-middle stuff.
And soak it up. Soak up the knowledge from Gronk, too. If you're surrounded by a guy like that, you'd be stupid not to. A couple of things that the Patriots aren't doing this season, which make me raise my eyebrows a little bit. I understand the no joint practices would have been a little bit of a circus with the Eagles coming into town as a Super Bowl rematch. No officials at practice. At first glance, you kind of shrug your shoulders and say, all right, well, I trust what they're doing. But it deviates from what they've always done. What's your reaction to them doing things in that regard differently this year?
I was really surprised by that because, this is my 10th training camp, and I can't recall a single time when they haven't had the officials in for at least a couple days. And I don't know, it sounded like the officials might have been scheduled to show up last Monday before that season ticket holder practice in the stadium. Maybe it just fell through or whatever, but really, really strange. Don't really know what to make of it because, my interpretation of it is if the coach calls the league and says, I want officials, they show up. Yeah. So, again, I don't know what, and then you look at the kickoff rules. It's not just like the helmet stuff.
Right, there's a lot of rule changes.
These guys, these guys are, I don't want to, back in June, they were struggling to kind of pick up the concept of the new kickoff rules. I don't know what it's like now. I'm sure there's been a lot more progress, but you would think that you'd want those guys in there to at least guide you.
Just another thing to point to if later on we start to see some struggles. Talk about the defense a little bit. Guy that's jumped out, many people have talked about, we'll get to second. Guy I want to point to first is Malcolm Brown, someone you wrote about, someone who you're saying is playing some of the best football that you've seen from him. What do you anticipate from him, and what's separated what he's done this year from what maybe you've seen in the past?
Well, no, I wouldn't go that far with this year because, he's surprisingly, this is a guy who is very well respected behind the scenes and has a chance to, if he plays the best season of his career, could be one of the about a dozen defensive tackles who makes north of $5 million a year annually with his next contract. The Patriots already determined he wasn't going to be worth the $7 that the fifth-year option would have, paid him in 2019. But I'm kind of surprised, but also impressed by Danny Shelton. Shelton has overtaken Brown on the depth chart already. You're seeing Shelton and Lawrence Guy out there with that first team almost on a daily basis. So, I think you could have a situation here where Belichick is looking at both Shelton and Brown and saying, I might pay one of you, so this is a season-long tryout. You want that $5 million a year contract, the best first-round pick from the 2015 draft, go out and take it.
That's good. That's a good little battle. The other guy I want you to touch on is Adrian Claiborne, because by most accounts, he appears almost ready to go. This is the guy who's motivated, and this is the guy who has something to prove. What's your thoughts on Adrian?
Yeah, just a solid veteran, and they need a guy like that because, he's been productive in his career. He's a good guy to have in the locker room, pretty quiet, but, again, sometimes being a good quiet is a good thing, not to be redundant there, but ultimately I was. But, it shores up the depth chart, and, you know what you're going to get from Trey Flowers. Flowers doubled his disruption production from my film stats last year. So this is a guy who is clearly soaring at the right time. But Dietrich Wise, who was great last year, has an injury history. You don't know if you want to throw him out there more than 40 to 50% of the snaps because, you run that risk. Derek Rivers coming back from a torn ACL. So you don't know what you're going to get out of him as the fourth defensive end out there. So if you can get Claiborne out there for, let's say, 75% of the snaps, or even if it's just a little south of that, you take some of the stress off Wise and Rivers. And then if you bring in Wise as sort of a rotational pass rusher, you get the best out of him on every single play. You let him go out and do what he does. And again, that amplifies the pass rush just by having that veteran at the top.
Game week, we have Washington coming to town Thursday, so I'm going to set you up this way. As we get ready for the first game at Gillette Stadium Thursday night, who's trending up and who's trending down? Pick one guy for each category.
You know what? I'm just going to go with Trent Brown because I'm comfortable with this one. This was the biggest question going into training camp. Who is going to start at left tackle? You got the first-round pick in Isaiah Wynn. They draft him on that Thursday night of the draft. We were talking about this, and then less than, 12 hours later, they acquire Trent Brown. What are they going to do with Brown? Who's the odd man out? You got Cannon coming back. And it hasn't even been a debate. It's been Brown from day one. There's been no rotation. Looks like Isaiah Wynn's going to be the backup left tackle. And Brown, if you've been down to the guy blocks out the sun. He's one of the most enormous human beings I've ever seen, and he's fast, which is weird. It just boggles the mind. So that's the starting left tackle. And my goodness, if he stays healthy and consistent over the course of this season, he's going to be the steal of the offseason.
All right, dare I have you say trending down? Who's trending down?
Trending
is this easier or harder?
This one's a little harder, but a guy to look at is Mike Gillislee. And that's a weird one because I think fans were probably sour on him after his first year anyway. But Gillislee is a guy who Belichick has given every opportunity in the world to go out and win or at least compete with that between the tackles job. You know, he's not going to catch a lot of passes. He's not going to play special teams. But if he can go out there and run the ball between the tackles the way that he loved when he was in Buffalo, then again, he's going to make the team. It was strange, I thought, on Saturday that Gillislee was with the third-team offense to close down practice. It was the only competitive period of the day. So that tells me that I think Gillislee, Jeremy Hill, two guys battling for that last running back job. You know, the thing I like about that with the way Belichick uses his running backs in the summer, both of those guys are probably going to get a half, you know, over the course of, you know, these next 4 games, just to see what they can do when they're in a groove. And if Gillislee's better than he was to close last year, great. I'm just curious why he was with the third team on Saturday.
Maybe he'll play a little more on Thursday night. We shall see. I want to tee you up to talk a little bit about your book, which is coming out early October. It's called If These Walls Could Talk, The New England Patriots. What are we going to hear? What are we going to read?
Yeah, well, you know, the haters, they would say that me and Scott Zolak couldn't read a book, but here we are. We went out and we wrote one just to prove everybody wrong. Look, this is a really, really fun project. It's Zoe and I just telling stories from our time around the team. Obviously, he was on the Patriots in the 90s. He took a big chunk of that, you know, told some just great stuff about Bledsoe, who wrote the foreword, Parcells, Pete Carroll, and then we kind of tag teamed the 2000s together. A lot of unreported stuff. We got some great Tom Brady stories, some good Gronk stuff in there. So this is, you know, something that we're really proud of, coming out October 2nd.
Good stuff. Jeff Howe from The Athletic with us as the Patriots get set for their first preseason game this Thursday night at Gillette Stadium against Washington.